Moving on to the defense, I mean, again, changes everywhere. 50% of the defense has changed over from last season. Front and center is bringing in a guy like Duncan Keith, Stanley Cup winner on a successful franchise. They won 3 times while he was there. And obviously he's got his share of hardware over the years. Talk to me about the difference Duncan Keith could make and the other changes we've seen.
Well, I think there'll be 3 new players on the Oilers defense from last year. I mean, obviously Evan Bouchard was here but didn't play much, so he'll be a regular. And then you've got Ceci and Keith in the second pairing. So that's 3 out of 6 with Adam Larson moving to Seattle and Ethan Bear getting traded and Caleb Jones getting traded. So it is a different look. I know there's been many critics of Duncan Keith and Ceci as a pair, saying that Keith's too old, he's 38, his analytics are crappy the last couple of years. And it certainly hasn't played as well the last couple of years in Chicago as he had, when he won the Norris trophies and such. And that Ceci, they look at him like kind of a vanilla player, but he played very well in Pittsburgh last year. So to me, Ceci is a younger, better Travis Hamonic, who plays would be playing in Vancouver if he'd reported to camp. And it's a shutdown defenseman. I think as long as Keith plays his 17, 18 minutes a game, lets other people play on the power play, kills some penalties, and doesn't get overworked as he did in Chicago at 38 years old, I think he'd be fine. I think we should wait for a month to see how that pair is doing before we jump to any conclusions that Ken Holland made a trade bet that didn't work out. And in Evan Bouchard's case, they've been waiting for this young player since they drafted him, very high in the top 10. And he's at that point now where he has to play. He's eventually going to run a power play, but as long as Tyson Barrie is here, he's not going to run the Oilers' power play. But they want to see him in a third pairing, which I think is ideal. He's going to see a lot of third and fourth lines with his offensive ability, so they can break him in terms of playing more minutes than he would have played last season. And he's going to play with either Chris Russell, who got the start in the opening game, beside him, or Slater Cuckoo. So I think it's ideal for him. I wouldn't be surprised if sometime during the season, suddenly Bouchard, instead of playing 13 minutes, is playing 17 or 18. But they want to see him broken in slowly. And it's a different look. Obviously, they don't have the absolute shutdown defenseman like they did with Adam Larson, especially on the penalty kill. They're going to miss his physicality. And I think, the more you watched Adam Larson play, the more you appreciated him. And now he's gone to Seattle, signing as a free agent. So they'll miss that. But, the Oilers have the best top 9, certainly in the top 5 in the league, I think, as long as McDavid and Draisaitl are here and Hyman's there and Nugent Hopkins and such. And their defense, I guess if you're to break it down, out of 31 teams, where would you rank the Oilers' defense? It's probably, midway. Maybe it's sometime between 12 and 16th best in terms of putting up offense and such. So it's good enough, and we'll see as the season wears on how the Six play.
Yeah, because it is interesting, before the off season, so in between the end of the Oilers season and the end of the Stanley Cup playoffs, and before all the free agency and whatnot kicked in, the narrative was, the Oilers have to choose between keeping Tyson Barrie and signing him, and what to do with Evan Bouchard, since they're both red shot defensemen, and they're both, potential power play quarterbacks. Yes, of course, Evan Bouchard is at the beginning of his NHL career. I guess we'll wait and see what happens during the season, because if you do run into a situation where Bouchard is, maybe he's outplaying Barrie at some point. I don't know. But you have an embarrassment of offensive riches on the blue line with Barrie, and potentially Bouchard, we'll wait and see. And also with Darnell Nurse, who scored plenty of goals last season.
Well, it's going to be an Olympic watch for Darnell Nurse, too, to see whether he makes the Olympic team. If he plays as well as he did last year, he'll be on the team, on the left side, on the Canadian Olympic team for Beijing. I think he's only scratched the surface. I think, in a lot of cases in the NHL, your best defenseman is not necessarily a number one defenseman on some teams. It's just that he's your best guy, not a true number one defenseman. But I think as long as Darnell plays some power play and is out there killing penalties and out there against the other team's better players, he's a number one defenseman. And I think he loves to play, and I don't think he hurts them either 5-on-5 or on the power play at all. So I think he's really evolved into an all-around defenseman after being young and sometimes being like the wild colt let loose from the barn, who wanted to run and be up the ice, and sometimes made mistakes. I think he's watched a lot of video. He does that endlessly of his own games and other players, other strong defensemen, and I think he's realized that in the National Hockey League, quieter or simpler is better for a defenseman. Certainly in your end of the ice, just get the puck, move it 10 feet, and get up into the play. And I think he's turned into an awfully good defenseman. And Tyson Barrie's case, you're right. Tyson Barrie, he wouldn't be here if Adam Larson hadn't got traded. I don't think. They had to come up with $4 million for Adam Larson, and if they did, I don't know if they had the money for Tyson Barrie, but they circled back to Barrie. And you're right, it's a bit redundant having Barrie and Bouchard, because eventually Bouchard, is going to be taking probably some of Tyson Barrie's ice time because he's an offensive defenseman. But right now, Tyson Barrie is, I think he's the best power play defenseman in the National Hockey League. Like he had, almost had 50 points last year in a 56-game season. You put him, if he plays all 82 games, how many points is he going to get with the Oilers power play? 70? So when's the last time an Oilers defenseman got 70 points? Paul Coffey. I don't even think Chris Pronger got 70 points this year. So he's very valuable at what he does.
I didn't even bring up Duncan Keith. I mean, I know he's tagged for second-line duty, and and obviously the bulk of his career is behind him, and we're not expecting him to put up the kind of numbers he did back in his Norris Trophy days. But he could end up being, a pleasant surprise as well, playing on this team as opposed to, a Blackhawks team on the decline the last few years.
A lot less pressure for a player of his ilk to get the puck to McDavid or Draisaitl and get it up the ice than playing in Chicago last year with no Jonathan Taves, who was out all season, and Kirby Dach got injured as well, playing in the World Juniors. So two of their better offensive, centers weren't there for him to move the puck, and the puck was in the Chicago end more than it should be, and that puts a lot of pressure on a defenseman. And he is 38, but he's like Mike Smith. What you see on the birth certificate isn't what you necessarily see on the ice. They take care of themselves very well, and they're two of the fittest players in the league, and the birth certificate doesn't mean quite so much. Now, more pressure being 38 as a defenseman than 38 as a forward when the puck's going the other way. It's going north, and when you're 38, the puck's in your end of the ice in terms of, physical ability to play a whole shift night after night after night. But I think he'll be fine. And one of the reasons they got him was they want him in the playoffs telling McDavid and Draisaitl and Nurse how it is. Hawks won 3 cups. He was an integral part of that team. He's won 2 Norris trophies as well. But it's the playoffs experience they're going to get from Keith, and it's how he plays and what he has to say. And I think in a lot of cases over the last couple of years, the Oilers didn't play well enough in the playoffs, and when push came to shove, the Oilers lost the games. They didn't win the games. They lost them. And maybe with Keith there, he can, tell them when things are going poorly, just relax. We'll be fine. We'll still win the game. So I don't think we'll see the true worth of Keith until the Oilers are in the playoffs.